For the first time in Trinidad and Tobago, the former wife of Muhammad Ali, Dr. Khalila Ali, will be attending Alhikmat for the Caribbean and South America Interfaith Banquet Dinner, building bridges with other faiths and cultures. A message will be delivered by Shaikh Shafayat Muhammad, the founder of Alhikmat Dawah Services, on Sunday, March 17, 2019 at 4:30 p.m. at the Paradise Point Banquet Hall, Central Warehousing Complex in Charleville, Chaguanas, Trinidad and Tobago, West Indies. A table of 10 will be 1,500 TTs. To reserve a seat or table for your family members or your non-Muslim friends, you can please contact Al-Hikmat office, inshallah. With over 20 years of traveling experience, Al-Hikmat Services is offering exclusive 2019 tours for a 10-day Umrah in Ramadan traveling to Mecca and Medina on May 11th to May 20th, and a 10-day tour of India and Dubai on October 13th through October 23rd, visiting holy sites, Taj Mahal, and many other historical sites. These groups will be led by Shaikh Shafayat. For more details, you can contact Al-Hikmat Dawah Services at 1-800-804-0267 or at 954-986-0158, or you can email us at alhikmat@alhikmat.com. Al-Hikmat now offering tours and travel services plus visa application and processing services for Umrah, Dubai, India, and many other countries. For more details, contact Al-Hikmat Services at 1-800-804-0267 or 954-986-0158, or you can email us at alhikmat@alhikmat.com.
All praises are due to Allahu Allah. All praises are due to Allahu Allah. Allahu 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 Allah. Allahu.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. If you would like to dedicate copies of one of these publications as Sadaqah Jariyah, continuous blessings for your parents or dear ones who have passed away, or fi sabilillah, in the path of Allah, please give us a call so we can place your names on these dedicated publications. You can call us at 954-986-0158, or you can also visit us at www.alhikmat.com.
Allah is the creator of different faces. Allah is the creator of all races. Allahu, 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 Allah.
Royal Bengal Trading, importer, exporter, wholesaler of Bangladeshi Indo-Pak groceries and spices. We specialize in various authentic Indian masalas, juices, flours, rices, and spices. We offer exclusive brands as Ocean Pearl, Shan, National, Tilda, Himani, and many, many more. We're located at 36B Coroni Savannah Road, Charleville, Chaguanas, Trinidad and Tobago. You can call us at 473-4676 or call 476-3117. Email us at wahabdk@gmail.com.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Interfaith Views and Issues on Al-Hikmat TV 24/7 online. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to have with us in Al-Hikmat studio Marjorie Aloni. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to have you around and have you with us at Al-Hikmat.
I love coming here, so thank you so much for this opportunity.
And for the benefit of our audience, Marjorie Aloni is the Director of Partnership Development at the Miami Jewish Health, which is a very large and well-known facility offering a lot of services, residential and medical. So Marjorie Aloni is also someone who has a lot of love for interfaith, has served a lot in interfaith services and activities. So we got an interesting show for you in our discussion here today for you, our viewers worldwide, especially with the kind of things happening in the world, misunderstandings, misconception. You know, these shows, and especially this show, Interfaith Views and Issues, is all about building bridges with different faiths and cultures and bringing people together to live a happier life in this world and this universe that we live into. So welcome again, Marjorie.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your, maybe a little bit about your position here at the Miami Jewish Health.
Well, my position is exactly what the title says, to build partnerships with different people, to let people know the services that we have to offer to everyone. We have independent living, assisted living, we do memory care, we do clinical trials, we have physical therapy. The list goes on and on and on. And it's really my job to let the public know what services are available to them.
Good. Good. That is phenomenal. That is unique. And your passion, your love for interfaith, when did it begin? What about it?
It actually began when I was in high school and then in college. I got involved in a couple of different dialogues, and I was just amazed at my ignorance of other faiths, and it was intriguing to me to learn about other faiths, and most importantly to see where our faiths kind of follow the same paths. So whether it was about the need to get involved in social justice, whether it was the life cycle events, whatever, it was fascinating to me to see that although we might come to things from a different perspective, we shared a lot of common things. And to me, that was the key. And even as you said in your introduction, it's important to build understanding. So that's what brought me to Interfaith. And when I came down here to Florida, we had an Interfaith Council in the city of Hollywood. I was working for the Jewish Federation at that time, and we were helped to found the Interfaith Council. And we brought clergy from all different faiths together. And probably my proudest moment was when I got the Muslim community involved, the Hindu community involved, and the Buddhist community involved, and the Baha'i community. Before that, it was strictly more or less Christian and Jewish, and we expanded Interfaith, and it made all the difference in the world in terms of really understanding and appreciating the differences that we all have.
Wonderful to hear that. What were you doing in Jewish Federation? What was your responsibility?
Jewish Federation, I was their director of community relations. So
Excellent.
Again, it was building those partnerships, and building interfaith partners was a key part of what I was responsible for. So we ran a lot of dialogues with, we had Christian Jewish dialogues, as you know, we had the Muslim Jewish dialogue, and it was really with the bottom line of increasing understanding to prevent issues from happening in the community. And when an issue did happen in the community, it was to ensure that we had reasonable people that we could go to say, let's downplay all of the hysteria and let's talk. Just let's talk one-to-one about what the issue is, what the problem is, and how we might be able to resolve it peacefully and kindly and compassionately.
Good. So just to let our viewers know, we have a little interesting thing coming up here. Marjorie, who has that very, very interesting Jewish background, and I can vouch for that. You know, she's worked with the Jewish Federation. She has been around. She has served in many different areas. She has been the former president of the Interfaith Council, which has been the most dynamic interfaith council in South Florida. I must share, I don't know if this is politically correct, but I remember once someone was trying to get a visa to go to Israel, and Marjorie was the person I called, and boom, I got it. We got it. So she has that kind of connection, relationship. She has been the person who has always invited me to be that one Muslim guest, an only Muslim guest at the Jewish or at the Israel Independence. Do you remember that, Marjorie?
I do remember it. I remember it very clearly, and I remember having been married to an Israeli at the time. And when I told my husband, you know, I talked to the Israeli consulate, they were thrilled to invite you and have you come because you also were speaking out at the time, and they appreciated your comments. And my husband, it was very interesting, my husband said to me, "Are you crazy? You want to get this guy killed? What do you mean you invite him to Israel Independence Day?" I said, no, trust me, everything is going to be fine. And we went to the synagogue for the Israel Independence Day program where it had. And I must say, you were probably the most popular person in that whole party. Everybody was so thrilled to see that you came and that you were interested in learning. And it was just a wonderful evening.
I think it's very unique because here I am, the only Muslim.
Yes.
At the Israel's independence celebration. Listen, that is very high-tech, very unique.
Yes.
And I mean, God bless you very much for that.
That was wonderful.
And I think you are such an ideal person. You're the one who have been so, so powerful, so influential, for want of a better word, into a lot of my involvement in interfaith in the United States of America.
Wow.
And today, in this show, I know you have a lot of questions.
I do.
Instead of I asking you a lot about yourself, you want to ask me more about my interfaith background, my interfaith experience, etc. So you go ahead. Shoot.
Okay.
So I just want to let our audience know. We're taking a little flip. Instead of I asking Marjorie questions here today, she's going to ask me about my interfaith background and experience because she has that interfaith experience, community services, so she very much wants to get involved in this discussion so it will be a betterment for us in our continued relationship of interfaith services to the world.
Thank you. I know a little about you. I know like where you were born and all that, but I thought we could start by you telling me, telling the audience where you were born, and for me, it was most interesting how you were brought up. What faith was practiced in your home as you were growing up?
Well, this is interesting. You know, I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. Because there are some people is like, where is Trinidad? In the Caribbean.
Yes.
My parents were Muslims. And my parents are still Muslims. But to cut a long story short, in the historic days when the British ruled many of the islands in the Caribbean, Indians from India were brought over to Trinidad. My forefathers, they were amongst those that came from India. However, in those days and those years, you had Muslims, Hindus, Christians, all kind of people that came on the ship or ships to the Caribbean. So my upbringing, very strange, unique, multicultural, multi-faith. Hence, at a certain time in my life, while my parents were Muslims, they did not really practice Islam.
I was just going to ask
I
you
do not
were there
remember,
observance.
you know, it's like I do not remember my father going to mosque, you know. So family members there were who did, but my parents directly were not practicing Muslims. Hence, I got involved in going to a Christian school, British run by a white woman, directly Christian school run by a white woman, only for white people in the Caribbean. Oh yeah. When I was the first Indian boy, well, there were only 2 Indian boys there, myself and another one, whose father was a top judge in the country. And it was called the Beacon Preparatory Academy in South Trinidad. So, and it was exclusive for whites, really, the rich and the high.
How did you get accepted?
How did I get in? That's interesting.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm probably sharing this on social media and on television. My grandfather lived next door to the school.
Ah, okay.
And this allowed me the opportunity because of the neighborhood and the relationship to get involved. Okay? And one of his son-in-law was a white from Britain. Excuse me. So it had a little bit of technicalities. However, when I got in, there were some whites who left. They could not handle a colored boy in the school. So I came from that background in those days.
Wow. Very interesting. and did you study Christianity in the school?
Yes, I went to the school, academic education, in a Christian environment, ended up studying Christianity, learning about Christianity, sang carols, learned the Bible. I even got a scholarship to become a pastor or priest, a scholarship that was given to me later on to become a pastor or a priest.
Wow.
In the Christian ministry.
Wow.
Yes, and during that period of time, it so happened that because my name was Muhammad, I ended up...
Give it away a little bit there. that you're
Yeah,
not Christian.
I ended up having other Muslim missionaries who came, and to cut a long story short, they offered me scholarships also to go to study. And that's how I ended up studying, going abroad, and getting back into the Islamic faith, etc. But I used to go to church. I prayed to Jesus. I remember clearly we had a picture of Jesus in our home. I will kneel down. I will pray to Jesus. I'll go to church every Sunday.
Wow.
And that's where my Christian background came from.
Wow. And I know in 1975 you went to India to study Islam. And what interests you or motivated you to do this? So you've been in college, you've been studying Christianity, etc. And now, was it because these other leaders in the Muslim community came to you and said, we'll give you scholarship, and you knew that your background was?
So they were Muslim missionaries, and they came, and they were like, how come you're Christian? How come you're not going to mosque? How come you're not practicing? So God has his ways of doing things.
Really?
You know, in Arabic, we call it hidayah, guidance. God has his ways of guiding you into his path. And they sponsored everything, scholarship, everything to go abroad and study. It was a difficult thing. My parents did not want me to go.
Really?
Of course, they were like, you have spent all these years in college, you have done all of this, we wasted our money, we wasted our time to make you somebody here, and you're going to study this religious thing, what would that do to you? And well, as you know,
what influence is that going to have to do with us now?
In those days, and remember, they were not practicing.
Right.
As the real practicing Muslims are. So they did not look at this Islamic scholarship as something prestigious or important. However, they insisted that I don't go. So it was a whole battle of families and relatives coming together to get this to happen. But finally it happened.
And so what, after having studied Christianity and all that, having not grown up in a really observant, I'll put it that way, Islamic home, why were you interested in studying Islam? I know these missionaries, or I'm not sure if that's the right term for them, but came to you and said, we want to offer you scholarship, you should learn about your... What was it that motivated you? Did you want to learn about your background? Did you feel like, hey, I should really know where I'm from, or...
I have always been very adventurous. That's the kind of person I am. I love to be adventurous, to explore. So it so happened, it was not just a scholarship in a plate. They took me with them to some different retreats. And for want of better words, you know, in the Muslim world, they are known as the Tabligh Jamaat. I know that will be confusing to you. It's a group that do a lot of outreach.
Outreach, okay.
And trying to get Muslims back on the path.
Gotcha.
Encouraging Muslims, and I'm sure in the Jewish faith,
every faith does, I think.
Encouraging people of their faith to come back on the right path and to get hold of yourself of where you have gone lost and went astray. So they took me on different retreats, if I would want to say. Different places, spent 3-4 days with them. And these were some people from South Africa.
Wow,
oh yeah, they were not from the Caribbean, they were from South Africa.
Okay.
They were heavy loaded financially, they were rich, they were wealthy, they were educated, and they were very religious. So they became very influential in my life.
And it was probably at a time when you were...
16 years.
Yeah, that's the right age to when you're searching for yourself and you're searching for meaning in life, and they gave you a great message.
You know, at that time, I was doing different courses on my own, how to build a television, how to build radios, how to do I love technology. I've always loved technology, media, you know, all this sort of science. Computer was not around in those days as we have today, You know, so it was about radio and television and all these handheld devices.
Still about communication,
Yes. So it took a little drill on me to make a decision. But their love, based on your question, their affection, in that retreat, they took me to another country. For about 1 month I spent with them. It was during the summer vacation. And that connection and that relationship and that...
A little light bulb in you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that won my heart, that made me decide that I have to go.
So let me ask you a question. So as you're studying Islam, did you have to learn a different language? Did you have to learn text to be able to read Arabic or whatever?
Oh, definitely. When I went
and
abroad...
how long did that take?
When I went,
do that?
it was in India. So when I went to India, it took a lot of time. But we were doing it together. We had to get people to help us on the side, or the students, or the teachers, to help teach you Urdu. Urdu is a language in India, which was the medium for us to learn Arabic.
Okay.
And that's how we went ahead learning. It was a real task. It could have been frustrating on days and times. It was trying. Those days we did not have cell phones. We had to go to the city to send a telegraph, telegraph, tuck, 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 tuck. In those days, back from India to the West, Trinidad, to get a message to my parents. When they would write a letter to me, it would be like a month, sometimes 2 months, sometimes 3 months, and you will not get a letter. It will get stuck into the mails. It was, today we call it snail mail.
Yes.
It was slower than
It was
snail.
real snail mail.
It was snail and it was stale. By the time you got mails and news, it was all gone.
Over. So while you were studying, I noticed in your bio, and you alluded to it just a few minutes ago, that you also took courses in journalism. And I know from our work together in Interfaith that when you came on board, you really created a newsletter, you were really into communication. Where did that come from?
So while I was studying in India, I was really motivated to do journalism. Because, India is an interesting country when it comes to media, when it comes to movies, when it comes to production. India is really fascinating. So I got to like journalism in India. And remember, when I was growing up already, I loved the technology, building radios, putting together this, putting that during my college days. So that's where I took a course in India on journalism. And India journalism is very high tech. You got so many states, so many languages. So in reading and writing across there, it was really fascinating, and it did help me. That's how when I came back after qualifying as an Islamic scholar, I got involved in my own producing the Alhikmat magazine, which is over 37 years old, out there consistently. Thank God. Got involved in television, got involved having my own television programs, my own radio shows. I would have my own 1 hours on television. Ever since in the Caribbean, when I came back, on television, on radio, always on the newspaper, producing my own magazine, doing a lot of publications. It led me on to printing. So you see the whole media thing. Those were the days before social media. I have always been involved in
And I think
media.
you were very advanced, because as you were getting into this, from what I'm hearing, to help spread the word, to help explain Islam, explain all of the things that you were learning to others. You are also still involved in Interfaith in your own way. So
yes, so I used that journalism skill to spread the message of humanity.
Yes.
To remove misunderstandings among cultures and faiths, in addition to spreading the message of Islam. And bringing people together.
And so you came to the U.S. when?
And around 1990, I started visiting the United States and lecturing in different states throughout the United States.
And when did you create Darul Uloom Islamic Institute here
and
in Pembroke
I finally
Pines?
started taking root here like in 1991. But from 90, I will come, go, spend most of the times, I would spend in the USA doing lectures and doing missionary work. In those days, you could have said that because, missionary work, Christians, Muslims, was a very prominent thing, very recognized thing. Even the U.S. immigration system accepted that missionary work. Nowadays, in many
It could be
countries,
a
you cannot
dirty
say
word,
you're
too.
going to do
Yeah.
missionary work.
Yeah.
But in those days, it was welcome. Yeah.
And so, Darul Uloom Islamic Institute, is it for religious services? Does it do education? Does it do social service? What? Tell us about the
So
institute.
Darul Uloom came about in my mind because I studied in the oldest and the largest Darul Uloom in the world, which was founded in India. And that's where all the Darul Ulooms, whether it's Pakistan or Bangladesh or India or South
They all went to
Africa
study
or
there?
London, throughout the world, that's the mother.
Okay.
And I, thank God, have been
Had that
blessed to study
opportunity.
there.
Yeah.
So that dream of mine to establish a Darul Uloom in America, and I think I am the first person to have established a Darul Uloom named in the United States of America. Then you have a lot of Darul Ulooms came about in different states, different cities in America. So Darul Uloom is basically house of knowledge. It means Dar, house, Ul, of, the Ulum, knowledge. So Darul Uloom is based on education, teaching people, students. We produce imams. We educate people, imams, like pastors or spiritual leaders. And Al-Hikmat, so I need to share that. Al-Hikmat now is more the media section, the outreach department, interfaith, outreach, publications, social media, TV, radio, all the publications, everything come from Al-Hikmat. Al-Hikmat is a different organization entirely,
Okay.
totally different.
And where
Darul
is the
Uloom
social
different.
services? Is that with Alhikmat?
The
provide-
social services between both of them.
For both of them.
Like
okay.
community social services, but Al-Hikmat basically manage the social services.
Okay. Okay. So now talking a little about you're in the States and you're getting involved in interfaith, and you became in 2002 you became the first Muslim president of the Interfaith Council of Greater Hollywood. And I'm just curious, what interested you in taking on this leadership position? And for your presidency, what kind of message did you want to send as the first Muslim president of Interfaith Council? That held a lot of maybe pressure for you because this was the first Muslim. What did you see happening with that?
Well, not only pressure, but because you're one of the very influential person in me becoming president of the Interfaith Council, which has been the most dynamic interfaith council in South Florida, you would remember that took place in 2001. The year 9/11 happened,
Yes,
I think.
it was right after, yeah.
Right after
Right.
9/11.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So there was a big need for this. It was the
Correct.
most difficult time to be a president
Right.
of an interfaith council.
Right.
And I love the question. But because we were involved in interfaith before 9/11, many years before 9/11, in the late 1990s, 97, 98, we were involved in interfaith here in South Florida. So by the time 9/11 happened, I was well known amongst the Jewish Christian communities. And that's how, I mean, you recommended me in your consultation with other Jewish leaders and Christian leaders for me to be elected to that position as the president. But as I said, 9/11, that's when
Right. Very difficult time.
Muslims were being beaten down.
Correct.
And here I got that position as the president. So my message there was to really remove differences, misconceptions, build bridges among cultures and faiths and misunderstanding. And we were able to accomplish that and show the interfaith relationship that we can have, even though you got radicals and you got people who do things and misrepresent religions. We as a people of humanity can still build those bridges.
For the first time in Trinidad and Tobago, the former wife of Muhammad Ali, Dr. Khalila Ali, will be attending Al-Hikmat for the Caribbean and South America Interfaith Banquet Dinner, building bridges with other faiths and cultures. A message will be delivered by Shaikh Shafayat Muhammad, the founder of Al-Hikmat Dawah Services, on Sunday, March 17, 2019 at 4:30 p.m. at the Paradise Point Banquet Hall, Central Warehousing Complex in Charleville, Chaguanas, Trinidad and Tobago, West Indies. A table of 10 will be 1,500 TTs. To reserve a seat or table for your family members or your non-Muslim friends, you can please contact Al-Hikmat office, inshallah.
Out of curiosity, I mean, obviously you have a deep, abiding faith and passion for interfaith, and you've explained why. But I'm curious, how did your congregation, how did your fellow Muslims that at Darul Uloom or at Alhikmat, how did they feel about your involvement in interfaith issues, especially, as you say, post 9/11 and feeling down and feeling people were not being respectful to them, what have you? How did they feel about you choosing to put yourself, if you will, in the line of fire of getting involved in interfaith and being the spokesperson?
Well, that's a powerful question. Very powerful. Very powerful.
I was there, I remember.
Very powerful.
Yes.
In those days, there was a lot of tension among Muslims and Americans, in general, Americans. I'll just refer to two incidents or instances. So there was once a rally or a demonstration against the Israel embassy, or not the embassy, maybe Israel.
The consulate.
And
too,
it was down in Miami.
Yes, the
In
Israeli
front of the
consulate.
embassy. So there were Muslims who invited me. I did not go. Do you know they sent a death threat to me? That I am not a true Muslim. I am Jewish. I'm the Jewish imam.
Yes.
They called me the Reverend Imam. They criticized me. They said that I am more Jewish than Muslim, so my blood is kosher, meaning that they can kill me. So I got death threats for being involved in interfaith. But remember, you are an ideal example. Remember, you used to set up meetings, and we would meet the consulate, some of the representatives from the consulate of the Israel embassy. We had lunch together. Do you remember that?
Yes, I
Once
do.
or twice.
Yes.
And so if we had a relationship that I could have spoken to the ambassador, the consular, and the embassy, why would I make myself stupid to go
Right.
in the front of the embassy and march
Right.
to express an opinion? When you could have picked up a phone, we could have talked and get an idea and discuss a matter. So why should I have gone? I did not need to go. But check out what has happened. They threatened my life. I had one other guy tell me, these people only appointed you as president of the Interfaith Council because it's a way of killing you. So I had Muslims threatening my life, and I had Muslims telling me that the Jewish Christian people have put me into this position,
So you'd be a target.
so I'll be a target, so they
Wow.
can kill me in an indirect way.
Oh,
but thank
my.
God I'm still alive.
Yes. Yes.
Thank God.
I do
but
remember-
you're really an important person in all this upbringing.
I do remember that there was that the FBI came to the Institute because there were threats at that time. I remember that. And I also remember that you were really very outspoken. Part of the issues that we talked about with the Israeli consulate was the use of the word jihad and what it really meant as more of a spiritual journey to get to another level versus the politicalization of that word. And you spoke out about that, and I think that also made you a threat, but it was part
striving
of the
against-
education that you wanted to give.
Jihad means to strive, and I kept on promoting the aspect of striving against
Within
your
yourself.
ego,
Yes.
your
Yeah.
selfishness, and yourself to be a better person,
Right.
to do better for your own success in whatever ways it may be. But you're right, after 9/11, you had so much of FBI interrogation. On both sides, there were people who were looking at me as a threat. There were people who were threatening to kill me because of my involvement in interfaith. So sad. Now, and I may probably be jumping one of the questions you have. When President Trump became president, and with all his remarks that he made in his campaign, the very same people, and some of the very same people who threatened me, called me a rabbi Muslim, condemned me, they were the same people making all the headway and all the effort to be in the front line of interfaith. And I was like, why do you have to wait for something to happen? You have to
Right.
wait for President Trump to say, get rid of all the Muslims in America before you get up and understand interfaith, when I have been in interfaith long before that. I have been in interfaith ever since in Trinidad and Tobago. When I qualified and I went back, I started my interfaith work in Trinidad in the year in the early 80s. I don't remember exactly what time, but in the early 80s.
I think, I mean, absolutely. I know for the fact, I remember all of those threats. I also remember when we were in the executive committee talking about electing you as president of the Interfaith Council, and I still remember that there was one of the Jewish leaders that was involved in Interfaith saying something to me about, can we really trust him?
Wow.
And I said, whoa, you know, this is interfaith and you're asking a question like that. That's, you know. But I remember those things.
So that was the problem
time.
I went
Yes.
through.
Yes.
Muslims were criticizing me. Non-Muslims were criticizing me. It was really...
It was difficult.
it was really an effort.
Yes. And I will say you were really truly rewarded for all of your stick-to-itness with the interfaith and with the message that you were trying to give. I know that you received awards from the Interfaith Council, the David Keating Award, and that was an award given mostly for the individual who helps to promote interfaith understanding and education. The NCCJ, the National Conference of Christians and Jews, gave you an award, and I believe you were involved with their clergy dialogues as well. And the St. Thomas gave you an award as well. Tell me about that one.
Well, in those days, in the late 90s and early 2000, you're talking 20 years ago, an average of 20 years ago.
Wow.
I don't like to say this, but based on the media and response in those times, I happen to be one of the pioneers of interfaith in the United States of America. In the United
Absolutely.
States of America. NCCJ was a national organization called the National Conference for Christian and Jews, and it made national news that for the first time you were having an Islamic scholar and a rabbi getting the Silver Medallion Award. And I
Wow.
got that award, which was a national award as a Muslim clergy. So history has it in America, many organizations are involved in interfaith throughout America now, after 9/11, since, you know, all the different things. But I must say, thank God,
at that time,
on the records,
yeah.
I am one of the
Few that were involved.
few who are the
Yeah.
pioneers
Absolutely.
of interfaith in America. In South Florida, I happen to be the pioneer
Yes,
of interfaith.
absolutely. No question about
Yes,
that.
yes.
As part of that pioneer, some of the things that you did, you were involved in a number of pulpit exchanges. You would go on a Sabbath, a Sunday for the Christians to a
Yes,
church,
yes.
and their priest would come and talk to your group. Same thing with the synagogues. What was it like for you to go into a different house of worship? It's one thing to have dialogues outside and you're doing educational conversation. What was it like for you to go into a house of worship that was different than your own, number one? And number two, when you were asked to do the pulpit exchange, what kind of message, what were your sermons about?
Well, you got to remember, I grew up Christian.
Oh,
Went
that's
to
right.
church,
So yeah, it was easy for
went
you
to
go
Christian
church.
school. So I had that sort of biblical experience and background, thank God. And that that has been a major strength in my interfaith background. Because I've
You
been
have that
around,
understanding. Yes,
I've been to a
absolutely.
white, and I like to use the term because that's how it was called then, a white school, where everyone around me, my friends and my classmates, were all
different from you,
British
but
and they were
yeah.
all whites.
Yeah.
So I grew up being very multicultural. They were Christians and Jews of different faiths. So we played together, we had fun together, there was no problem. It was really nice. And I was very much liked by the principal of the school. That is the principal who got me the scholarship to be a pastoral priest. You see, so when I go to churches or when I went to churches and synagogues, I really felt at home. It was not foreign ground for me. I really didn't.
That's wonderful.
There were a
That's
lot of people who thought and were very critical of me from the Muslim faith. What is he doing there? What is happening? Because you understand, Orthodox Christians and Orthodox Jews of different levels do not tolerate going into other
Absolutely.
religious institutions.
Correct.
So the traditional conservative Muslims, some of them had a problem. They thought my faith was gone when I go to a Jewish place or a Christian. So it was a little technical, but personally in me, because of my going to church,
Your
before I
background,
want to
you
study
felt
Islam,
comfortable. Yeah.
and the biblical teachings, there were times, Marjorie, when I would give a lecture in a synagogue or a church, and it would be totally on the Torah and the Bible. And I would have Christian and Jews come to me and say, where did you learn
Wow,
that?
right.
And I'm like, but from your scriptures.
Yes.
And they're like, wow, we didn't know that. I say, yeah, you got to
Yes.
read your books.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of Christians and Jews, like Muslims, Christian, Jews, and Muslims, do not read their scriptures.
Absolutely.
They only listen to what the rabbi, the priest, or the imam got to say. So a lot of the depth in the scriptures they don't know. So when I would talk from the Bible and the Torah, they were like, amazed. We have heard that from our pastor and our priest.
And you know what was interesting to me, one of the interfaith programs that you suggested that we do, and it turned out to be my favorite interfaith program, was to take a look at the prophet Abraham. And we had a panel, if you recall, of different faith leaders who would talk from the text of what Abraham meant to their faith, to their particular religion. And to me, that kind of cut across something like what you're saying is a basic understanding that we all share certain aspects.
And that was so educational
Yes.
because you were talking about the Torah, the
Absolutely.
Psalms, the Bible, the Quran, and you see so many commonalities in these scriptures, so educational for the congregation. And that was really healthy that we used to get going in those days. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. You represented Islam at the Florida State Faith Summit. I beg ignorance, what is the Florida State Summit? And I know that it was Governor Bush, that you had, again, another milestone of being the first Muslim
Yes.
involved in that,
So
invited to
that
that.
was a summit that Governor Bush had spearheaded at the Capitol building in Tallahassee, Florida, the capital of Florida. And it was to bring religious leaders of different faiths to come together and discuss issues and, of course, work together from a faith-based vision for the betterment of the people in America. And I happen to have been the first Muslim to get through and be invited personally and honored to be there.
Wow, fabulous.
Yes, in the days of Governor Jeb Bush.
Great. This, to me, is fascinating, and I want to learn a little bit more about what you had to say, but I know that you have lectured on Islam and terrorism, hot words, to the Pembroke Pines Police, but also, I believe, to the FBI and to other law enforcement agencies. So really what I'd like to know is what were the key points that you discussed with them when you were talking about Islam and terrorism, and who initiated you coming to give those talks? Was it you suggesting that it would be important for them to learn this, or did it come from law enforcement?
Both ways.
Both ways, okay.
Both ways. So after 9/11, you had this great misunderstanding, mistrust, and problems in America. And because I'm here based in Pembroke Pines, I had a good working relationship with the police officers and law enforcement. And remember, I've always had interfaith background before 9/11. Okay? So they thought that it was important that the police officers, so this came from them, that the police officers should know more about cultural diversity.
Okay.
Reason for that is different cultures got different ways. You know, some people will bow. Some may not shake hands. They'll bow. Some may not look at you in your eyes and talk.
Direct contact, yeah.
So police officers, law enforcement, immigration officers, law enforcement, they probably take this and these signs as
As
something
other.
suspicious.
Right, right. Especially they're not looking you in the eye.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
and they will think you got something to hide.
Right.
It's disrespectful. And I'm just using those two
Yes,
examples.
yes.
Beside going into someone's home. In some people's home, you don't take your shoes off. In some homes, you take your shoes off. So you might go into a Muslim home and the lady will say, take your shoes off, please. The police officer will think something is wrong, or the FBI, or whoever it is. And some homes you go, the woman may not open the door because she does not allow strange men to come in the home when the husband is not there.
Modesty reasons,
they
yeah.
saw the need. And I was able to talk to some of these officers that I knew, to police officers, to educate the other officers on how important it is to understand cultural diversity, which will help them in
their job.
analyzing
Right.
their situation in the job.
And who's a real threat and,
And
who
who is
isn't.
the real threat
Yeah,
and
yeah.
why. You see what I'm saying? And then that led me on to now meeting such officers who retired. You know. And I'm remembering one of them, and I must mention his name. Sergeant Jim Gort. Sergeant Jim Gort. Very prominent. I had a big war with him. And when I say war, he gave me the hardest of time when I was lecturing the police officers after 9/11 on terrorism, on cultural diversity. I mean, he criticized me, he condemned me so bad that you would think that's the worst ever. Do you know what happened? He became my best of friend. He ended up, later on, we had a conversation. He started coming by me to learn to read Arabic. And I could mention this about him because we became real good friends. He started learning to read Arabic from me. Then he became a man who was involved in all these high-tech law enforcement program. I don't remember. It was some sort of anti-terrorism force that he had been a major part of, director with other former top directors of different agencies, whether the FBI, the CIA, whatever, and they would have big major courses in different universities and centers. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
In different states. I remember going to Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, to lecture to different law enforcement officers of all different levels. So that's how Sergeant Gort is the one who had invited me, okay, to go to these, and he would recommend my name to all these law enforcement meetings and educational training after 9/11 for me to lecture on anti-terrorism and on what is called multicultural diversity. So people understand the difference with Islam, with Muslims, with cultures, people who look like Muslims, people who don't. Because you remember, everybody was being targeted like a Muslim.
Right.
And nobody
Right.
could have, as long as you had the color like a Muslim.
Right.
They were mixing up Arabs with Sikhs, with Muslims. Everything was total chaos after 9/11.
I do remember in one of our dialogues, you throwing out the question to the audience about where do most Muslims, where the background, where do they come from? Is it Arab countries and or
That's another
elsewhere?
point.
And that was a very
and
telling
the-
thing for me.
A lot of
I
people
learned.
thought that Muslims were majority from
Arab,
Arabia.
right,
Not
and they're
knowing
not.
that they were the minority.
Correct.
You know, you
correct.
got the most amount of Muslims in Indonesia.
I will tell you that from the Jewish side of these Jewish-Muslim dialogues, that was probably the most startling fact that people did not understand
Yes.
and did not know.
So-
Pure ignorance, just did not know that.
So that was one of the reasons for the need of this sort of education. And definitely in those training centers, they used to have these training education programs. That's why I ran into different officers, different agencies, immigration, wherever, because they were all taking training after 9/11 at different
Yes.
states and different
Yes.
institutions. And I were invited as a guest speaker to lecture on these issues.
Did they ever ask you to, or did they ever, pressure maybe is not the right word, did they ever ask you or say to you that we feel it's the role of the Muslim leader in the mosque to identify people that might be terrorists within their congregations? Because I had heard that sometimes the FBI did that.
Well,
And how did you respond to it? They never asked you.
Never
okay.
asked me that directly, but you know, you will pick that up in the atmosphere, because that is what was going on
Right,
in the
then.
country. See
Yes.
something, say something.
Right.
If you know, for the safety of everybody, you had to be very careful, because you never can tell. Muslim or non-Muslim could have been a threat wherever.
Absolutely. So now let's move past 9/11 to today.
Yes.
And new interfaith efforts. An organization you're starting called Voice, Voice of Interfaith Clergy Expression. Why now? Why start this organization now? What are its goals? And how can your viewers or anyone else become involved in the organization?
So Voice, VOICE, Voice of Interfaith Clergy Expression, speaks for itself. Issues, humanitarian issues, interfaith issues, misunderstandings, building bridges with different cultures and faiths, etc. We want to bring clergy leaders from their faith background, their education, their experience, to voice their expression as to how we should work together, what can be a problem, what cannot be a problem, how we can solve problems, and make all these congregations worldwide, local, national, international, work together. And it can only happen from a clergy level, a scholarly level, a high level, where people will better understand what's going on and have that sort of authenticity of the educated leaders voicing their expression on issues, any issues, biblical, whatever it may be, local, cultural, whatever.
I'd like to get your opinion. I do see when there are incidents, Pennsylvania or elsewhere, happen, that's when you kind of see different clergy coming together, standing hand in hand, and it's wonderful to see that. But after it kind of dissipates from the news, you don't see an ongoing kind of interfaith
and that's why
activity.
this voice is important. We don't want to wait for a disaster or calamity before the media says something and someone has to say something, a backlash to something. We want to speak in advance to prevent these things from happening.
Yes.
And that's where we are. That's where we are.
Yes, absolutely. And I think just for sure, I think the reason this organization is so important, in my view, is that we really, in today's environment, need to have interfaith clergy, I feel, speaking up about how do you have civil conversations with one another where you may disagree about politics, but how do you create a beloved community, if you will? How do you create a community where we all feel that we're heard, or that we can be heard, and that we have some common goals?
Of course, with all these sort of political differences, racial differences, religious differences, you need these sort of religious leaders to come forth and express themselves, that will be able to lead the congregations and the masses in the right direction, as opposed to after there is a problem, now we're talking. That does not solve the problem. And many times it worsens the situation.
Because it's that photo moment where they all want to be seen, but there's not the work that has to take place to really get to know. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. And I do think that the clergy have to be the moral voice of the community. I wish you much luck on that, and for any clergy that would like to get involved in this, they don't have to be in Pembroke Pines, they can be anywhere.
Anywhere in the world, just join us, The Voice, worldwide, national, local, international, so we can all work together and have that voice of unity and strength.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this. It's been great.
It has been a pleasure, and I'm accustomed interviewing people. I haven't had people question me, but this is really nice. I loved it, especially you with your background and your experience and your relationship with me and the kind of interfaith work we have done together. I also look forward to continuing to work with you in many other interfaith areas for the betterment, first of all, for the pleasure of God and for the
Absolutely.
betterment of humanity. So thank you very much also
Thank you.
for all these questions and an opportunity to share my views and on issues.
And for me to get to know you even better, because I didn't know
Yes.
about your early background and upbringing.
Right.
So this has been exciting for me.
Thank you very much, and my background and interfaith experience. So, viewers, it has been a pleasure today. I can't just say with myself talking with Marjorie, but Marjorie talking to me, and I having to share my interfaith background and experiences with her for the benefit of our viewers worldwide as to where we came from and how we are and where we went and how we are and where we are today and the achievement and the success in working together. So thank you very much for tuning in to Al-Hikmat TV. It has always been a pleasure to be with you, the audience, and continue to tune in to Al-Hikmat TV 24/7 online. A pleasure again to have Marjorie Aloni with us in Al-Hikmat studio. Thank you again
Thank
very
you.
much, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
For the first time in Trinidad and Tobago, the former wife of Muhammad Ali, Dr. Khalila Ali, will be attending Al-Hikmat for the Caribbean and South America Interfaith Banquet Dinner, building bridges with other faiths and cultures. A message will be delivered by Shaikh Shafayat Muhammad, the founder of Alhikmat Dawah Services, on Sunday, March 17, 2019 at 4:30 p.m. at the Paradise Point Banquet Hall, Central Warehousing Complex in Charleville, Chaguanas, Trinidad and Tobago, West Indies. A table of 10 will be 1,500 TTs. To reserve a seat or table for your family members or your non-Muslim friends, you can please contact Al-Hikmat office, inshallah. With over 20 years of traveling experience, Al-Hikmat Services is offering exclusive 2019 tours for a 10-day Umrah in Ramadan traveling to Mecca and Medina on May 11th to May 20th, and a 10-day tour of India and Dubai on October 13th through October 23rd, visiting holy sites, Taj Mahal, and many other historical sites. These groups will be led by Shaikh Shafayat. For more details, you can contact Al-Hikmat Dawah Services at 1-800-804-0267 or at 954-986-0158, or you can email us at alhikmat@alhikmat.com. Al-Hikmat now offering tours and travel services plus visa application and processing services for Umrah, Dubai, India, and many other countries. For more details, contact Al-Hikmat Services at 1-800-804-0267 or 954-986-0158, or you can email us at alhikmat@alhikmat.com. Royal Bengal Trading, importer, exporter, wholesaler of Bangladeshi Indo-Pak groceries and spices. We specialize in various authentic Indian masalas, juices, flours, rices, and spices. We offer exclusive brands as Ocean Pearl, Shan, National, Tilda, Himani, and many, many more. We're located at 36B Coroni Savannah Road, Charleville, Chaguanas, Trinidad and Tobago. You can call us at 473-4676 or call 476-3117. Email us at wahabdk@gmail.com.